All right, for those of you who made it through our business meeting, and for those of you who are just joining us, welcome. Um, I'm excited today to be able to host Elie and maybe Osama from Combatants for Peace. Um, the process of reconciliation has been used in places like Northern Ireland, with Indigenous people here in the US, in South Africa, but it has always been done after the conflict is over. And it addresses the lasting harms that have been done in conflict and works to heal and cut short the cycle of violence. But this process of reconciliation has never been attempted during an active conflict as a peace building tactic. It's a really new idea. And Combatants for Peace are trailblazers in that regard. During an active conflict in the Holy Land, you've got former soldiers from each side of that conflict walking a path together towards the same peace. And I find it really inspiring as a peace activist to see people who are doing something new and something that is really changing the game on peace building, in my opinion. And when you hear from Combatants for Peace, which most of us have a few times, you get the sense that they are protecting their own children, but they're also protecting children that they haven't met, who they have been told are their enemies. So you have human beings caught in the maelstrom, building a culture that won't let the humanity of the other side, the other person, go. They've been building trust together using two parallel structures. For everybody on one side of the conflict, there's somebody on the other side doing the same job and sharing their story. And I think that this transformation is it's in the realm of global peace building. It's unique, and it has a power that is really changing the game. We at New Hampshire Peace Action have worked quite a bit with Combatants for Peace over the last few years because we found that the power of these stories that are told is able to cut through entrenched positions that people hold on this issue and to reach the heart of anybody who's willing to sit and hear this message. Hopefully we'll have a little bit of time for presentation or after the presentation to ask some questions of Elie, and maybe Osama will make it. We're hoping. I apologize for the confusion around the start of this event. It is completely on me that I did not coordinate with Beth. I sent emails to Elie and Osama, but the date was confusing because of the time difference. And I should have kept Beth in the loop here. So if we do reach Q&A time and you have questions you want to ask, then please either put an asterisk in the chat or use the hand raise function in Zoom, and I will recognize you. And without holding up too much longer, it is my honor to introduce you to you all today, a new friend, Elie Avidor. And hopefully a little bit later, I will be able to introduce an old friend, Osama Elawat, whose story has certainly touched my heart. So Elie, I'm going to let you take it away. You're muted, Elie.
Hi, everybody. So shall I tell my personal story, or you want to ask questions? How does it work?
I think because you're new to New Hampshire Peace Action, we'd love to hear your personal story. Just tell us how you got where you are and why the work matters to you, and then I think we'll open it up.
Okay. All right. So I was born in 1951, like 3 years after the establishment of Israel. I grew up in Haifa and studied there. Did my the normal route of Israeli-born kid through high school, through youth movements, and we learned the narrative, the Israeli narrative of the few against the many, the establishment of the country. in Haifa, we went through the Sinai campaign, 56 campaign. What was it? The Israelis, the English, and the British and the French against Egypt. While Egypt, the Sinai campaign, Israel captured Sinai, and after pressure gave it up, trying to get to the Suez Canal. And there was an Egyptian ship that came to the water by Haifa and was bombing the city. So I remember this as I was like 5, 6 years old. Then the 67 war, the 6-day war, which was, I was, I think, 11th grade in school. And my job, like people in the city volunteered to different jobs. It was a disaster of 2 weeks of very, very high tension in the country because of the siege of the Egyptians in the Suez Canal. And we all felt this might be very, like, we felt that left alone in the world, that the armies, the Egyptian, the Arab countries coordinated the pressure on Israel, and Israel eventually, in the 6-day war, eventually that started the occupation when Israel occupied the West Bank and occupied Sinai. And then in 73, I was already, after I was in the army as an infantry soldier and officer. And 1 year after that, after I left the army, I finished my service. It was the 73 war, the Yom Kippur War. And I fought in the Golan Heights in the Mount Hermon battle, which was a very, very hard battle. We fought the Syrians. I saw my friends, like we were a line of 8 people, 6 people were killed in this battle. And this was a war for survival for Israel. And with lots of people dying. After that, I studied engineering in Haifa. And in fact, I left for 20 years. I lived in Canada and the US, in LA, in Toronto, and some 9 years in Virginia. And then I came back to Israel because I really felt connected. My story starts already, my family starts in the beginning of like in 1905, when my grandfather came from Russia. And he came to Israel and bought land in the north of Israel, land that was owned by a Lebanese, and built a big agriculture operation there. And I always visited, as a small kid, I visited the big house, the huge house, the European house that he built there, and me and my father used to maintain it. And I really felt connected to that story of my grandfather taking the inheritance of his part of the inheritance of the family, going from Russia and Germany. He studied agriculture in Germany and came to Israel for him to be back to the Jewish land. He was a Zionist, I guess. So that's the stories I grew up with the family history and the fight for survival and independence. But then, after I came back from the US, I saw this memorial ceremony that was done by the circle of families, of Berit families, Palestinian and Israeli Berit families, and Combatants for Peace together. They produced, it's the memorial, in fact, it is done on the Memorial Day of the Israeli soldier, kind of a sacred day, 1 day before Independence Day. For every Israeli, or many Israelis, go to cemeteries to remember the fallen soldiers. And here, Combatants for Peace and the circle of bereaved families started a tradition which is like 17 years old by now, of commemorating the pain and the death of people because of this conflict together. And this is unheard of in Israel, and very hard for many people to take. But after you go and you sit for an hour and a half, and you realize how the blood is blood, and fallen kids, it doesn't matter if they're Jewish or Muslim, Palestinian or Israeli, it's always a heartbreak for every family, for every mother, for every father, for every brother, for anybody who knows them, regardless for the cause. And you sit on this ceremony, during this ceremony, basically you cry for an hour and a half. And then you start thinking about the vicious circle of violence that is happening here because of the narrative, because of the stories that the leaders try to push through their people. And if 1/10 of the energy and the money that is going for ammunition was going towards teaching peace and teaching negotiation, we'd be much better off now. And that's how I felt. And you know, when you get to a certain age, you ask, so what do I do about it? Am I just voting every 4 years, or in Israel it's 4 times a year? But or am I doing something, joining the action? And I joined Combatants for Peace, and it's been an amazing trip for me, a trip that is going through amazing transitions that I've never imagined I'll go through. To think that as I'm spending lots of time in the occupied territories, basically a day or two in the occupied territories, being with accompanying shepherds, Palestinian shepherds that the Israeli settlers are harassed on a continuing basis, helping farmers with their problems because of settlers. Israeli settlers send their sewage system into their olive groves. So we are running to the different authorities, to the army, to the Israeli civil administration, trying to push them, or many other ways, any place of evil. And the nice thing is to know that Palestinians today, they recognize us and they call us for help. And we go to the field, and we, in cases of, now we have the problem of, I don't know if you heard about Eviatar. I mean, the right-wing settlers are pushing it to no end. And they know that the government has been for years very weak in responding. In fact, in some ways, it comes from the authorities, from the government, the idea of annexation of Area C of the occupied territory. And that for Israel, it meant, in order to annex the area, it meant getting rid of 60,000 Palestinians that live there. Most of them are Bedouins or farmers, and just giving them very, very hard time. They don't let them dig wells. They don't let them build houses, build shacks for their herds. They make it uneconomical to be a farmer in these areas. And what happens is that the farmers and the Bedouins are being pushed to move to the villages, to the Palestinian villages in Area B. And so we are there to follow and accompany the shepherds, for instance. And whenever an army officer comes and try to tell them this is a military zone, you have to get out of with your herd out of the military zone, we go there and we start to question the officer, the army officer, telling them, show me this piece of paper, show me the notice, the military notice. And we check the notice, and we check that the map is the right map and the day is the right date, and the officer of the right person, the signature of the right officer. And if it's not the case, we just tell them, forget it. We are here. We are staying here with the shepherd. Or even physical contact when it's Israeli settlers, Israeli shepherds. They come very aggressively and they will walk through the Palestinian herd, sheep, and try to disperse them, push the Palestinian shepherd, and we are kind of stopping them and buffering physically, and keeping trying to maintain the situation that it won't be violent, because when we are there, the army, the police, the Israeli settler is way less aggressive because they know we take picture of everything, we report to lawyers, and that's as much as we can help. And of course we help in many other ways, but these are some of the ways. And now just something I've been to yesterday, demonstrations of new settlement it's called Eviatar, not far from Nablus. The settlers brought some 50 structures and created the community, and they have no problem bringing families with really young kids to how to house these structures, such that if there'll be the order of dismantling these houses, there'll be a big fight with small kids and amazing pictures that the army and the government really doesn't want anybody to see. So they know their tricks, they know their way, and the Palestinians are basically they are really in the corner, and all they can do is demonstrate. So we went to the nearby hill and we're just demonstrating, and the army is coming with their drones and throwing tear gas from the drones on the crowd. It's really hard. It's really hard. So for us, the important thing is to help the Palestinians on one hand, and to show that the Palestinians, the Israelis are not only settlers and soldiers, because these are the only people, the only Israelis that they see. When they see us talking, they see us in action, helping them, and pressing the Israeli authorities or the pre-Israeli military, they realize that they are Israelis to talk to. Because in fact, most Palestinians don't want to talk to Israelis, and they have what they call the anti-normalization movement, which says that no matter what is this Israeli is doing, peace movement or not peace movement, you don't deal with Israelis. And that's a very hard situation to be in. So that's why we are there, and that's the work that we're doing. I'll add just the principles. I don't know, I understand you heard about Combatants, that we are a non-violent organization where Israeli-Palestinian everything equal in the organization. Every job, every position we have among the Israelis, we have among the Palestinians. The CEO, the financial manager, the office manager, the program manager, everything is on both sides. And we work together. We work together both on the Israeli side and on the Palestinian side, because just as the Palestinians don't know much about Israeli peace movements, the Israelis don't know about that. So lots of education programs are done, mainly with young youth that before they go to the army. They come, they hear the Palestinian members of combatants, hear their stories, and they get another viewpoint of the conflict.
Thank you so much, Elie. And we just got word that Ahmed will be joining us in a moment. Before we get too much further, can you give us a rundown? I know a lot of people on this call follow the situation in Israel and Palestine very closely. Can you give us just your opinion as an Israeli of what changes we might expect to see, if any, under the new administration post the 2021 elections?
Hard question, because this is the weirdest government that has ever been to Israel, from all the way to the right, with Bennett, who was the head of the bureaucracy in the West Bank, all the way to Meretz that is fighting it. So, and in fact, I think the agreement basically is not to touch this hot potato, just to deal with COVID, the financial, the education, the health, everything but the political situation, the political problems in Israel. Because on that they agree. On everything else, they don't agree. And but the facts on the ground are there for the government to solve. One of them being Aviatar, as I mentioned, these new settlements that the army said is completely illegal. I mean, we didn't need the army to say that, but it's nice to see that the army commanders say that this is an illegal settlement, has to be moved away. And now it's up to Mr. Bennett, the prime minister, to do it. So it will be very interesting to see how it pulls it together, because if he does that, if he's trying to relocate this settlement or take it apart, we all know the type of response that he'll get from his base, basically, you know? So I don't know about hope. For one thing, you know, Bibi and Trump, this was a disaster couple for any peace movement. And so now we don't have Bibi, we don't have Trump, and we hope that things will be different in the West Bank.
All right, thank you, Elie. I'm going to turn it over to Ahmed, who has just joined us. And Ahmed, I don't have an introduction ready because I've never met you. Didn't have a bio, but I am so glad that you were able to make it on short notice. Ahmed, could you give us just a little bit of your story and background, and tell us a little bit about what your work has been like in recent years? Ahmed still getting set up there. Sorry, Ahmed, I kind of threw you right in.
Sorry, guys, but hold on, just give me 1 second. Not more. I think now I'm.
We can hear and see you. So.
Okay, I'm ready to. Yeah, I'm ready.
Thank you for joining us on such short notice, Ahmed, and welcome. This is a New Hampshire Peace Action. We're a group of peace activists here in New England, northeastern corner of the U.S., and we're really glad to have you here. If you could just tell us a little bit about yourself, how you wound up working for peace, and your background, and what it's like right now, that would be great.
Okay. I'm Ahmed Helou. I'm 49 years old. I live in Jericho. I born and grew up in Jericho, but actually I'm from Gaza. My family from Gaza, and my wife, family too from Gaza. I grew up with my parents' stories about how they. Okay, I'm a little bit because coming as quick. So my parents before 48 they were in Beersheba. My parents born and they grow up in Beersheba. In 48 they try to go back to Gaza, but they stuck somewhere. They decide to come to Jericho, so they stay in Jericho. I grew up with my grandparents' story about the Nakba, the war in 48 and 67. So that's make me angry and hit against the Jews in general. In 82, I was 10 years old. I remembered when I participated the first time for demonstration against the Israeli war in Lebanon. In first Intifada, I decided to involve decide to involve in this protest with Hamas. So I was Hamas members in the first Intifada. Make Palestinian flags, throw stones against the Israelis. Because of that, I stay 7 months in the Israeli jail. And when I go out from the jail, I start to participate with ambulance service, and I became ambulance service in '96 when Netanyahu himself decided to open tunnel under Al-Aqsa. Palestinians became angry and go to the street again and start to throw stones against the Israelis. So I went with my ambulance car and my uniform to help people to give hands. In that demonstration, I got a shot from the Israeli side. The bullets enter from my back till my neck and stopped in my neck till now. So I live with a live bullet in my neck. Till now. In 2004, my ex-girlfriend asked me to participate in a workshop with Israelis. That time, she shocked me and I started fight with her. How can she ask me to go to participate, to meet Israeli, to meet my enemy? But as we say, she has big mouth and she don't give on. She pushed me, and for sure I don't want to lose her in that time. I tell her the Shabak or Mossad or the Israeli Israeli security will not give me a permit. If I have a permit, if I got a permit, I will go. After a few days, she came with a paper. Ahmed, you get a permit. I said, fuck, how can you make that? It's not easy to get a permit, but in last, I get it. To be honest, I had two emotions, scare and happy. Scare, I will go to meet my enemy, to meet unknown people. Happy, I have a permit and I will go to Al-Aqsa, to mosque, to Jerusalem. So I went to participate for this workshop, 4 days with Israelis, talk about everything, about narrative, history, Holocaust, Nakba, Naksa, all these issues. And to be honest, it was first time for me met civilian people, Israeli, not soldiers, not settlers, people they agree in two states. They agree in Palestinian rights. So that in this time, that make me like big change and shock, because first time they met these people, and I don't know before in the Israeli society there is people like them. So they make me more interesting to know more about them and to meet them, to make relationship with people like them, till I found Combatants for Peace. And they invite me to participate with them and talk in the Memorial Day, which is the biggest event for the peace organization in Palestine and Israel. The Memorial Day, which combatants do it every day before one day for the Israel Independence Day. So that's given me really a lot of honor to speak in this event, and a lot of energy to stay struggle against the occupation in non-violence activities and non-violence protests. And till now, yes, I'm working. I'm doing as well. I'm still believe. I can't tell you. I'm still believe that someday will come and have good relationship and good situation in Palestine and Israel. And really, I believe it 100%. This is mine.
Thank you so much. All right, folks. So if you have questions for Ahmed or Elie, you can put them in the chat, or you could put an asterisk in the chat if you would like to be recognized to ask your questions yourself. Ahmed, thank you again for joining us on such short notice. Let's see what we've got for questions.
Thank you, and you are welcome. I'm ready for any question.
Yeah, so we have a lot of gratitude. Folks saying thank you for your messages in the chat. So I asked this question of Elie, Ahmed, and I'll ask it of you. Do you have any hope about the Israeli elections, Benjamin Netanyahu being removed? Do you feel like there's any possibility of serious change from the new government? It sounded like Elie's pretty disappointed with who they are, but I wanted to give you an opportunity to respond too. And do you see any chance of things moving forward with the new administration?
Yeah. Let me start like that. With Netanyahu, I don't have any hope. With Netanyahu himself, I don't, himself, not his party, himself, Netanyahu person, I don't have any hope. But also now, in the Israeli government, if we look to it, as I know, it's mixed with a lot of different parties. So all of them, they come because they hate Netanyahu as a person. They don't come to for like what's called it, like election program, or for some programs for the with Palestinian and Israeli program to have a peace or to change the situation with. No, they come because they hate Netanyahu. So I think will not anything will not happen, any change in the situation between the Palestinians and Israeli will not happen with this government.
Thank you. That was very much a similar response to what Elie gave. I'm going to turn it over to Whitney Howarth, who's one of our board members. She has a question. Whitney, go ahead.
Thank you. Ahmed and Elie, thank you so much for sharing your stories. This is the second program where I've heard Combatants for Peace, and I'm always particularly struck by the common theme that if Israelis and Palestinians could know each other in contexts outside of soldier-settler conflicts, that there would be more opportunities just for conversation, for human connection. And I'm wondering, because my understanding, I teach Israeli and Palestinian history. I've been doing so for 20 years. My understanding is the Israeli government does not want there to be a free flow of conversation and exchange and even population movement between areas that are primarily Palestinian and primarily Jewish. You say there are more programs, there's more nonprofits, more NGOs trying to do this work. Are there programs in schools, whether it's Israeli schools or Palestinian schools, to bring children from both communities together just to get to know each other, just to play, just to feel the humanity of each other? Could you please each answer that question? Thank you.
Okay.
Elie, you are.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that's a very good question. I must say, because we have a very, as you know, ignorance is the worst enemy, and everybody's afraid because they don't know. So education is supreme important, and many of us are like what we do here. We do much more of that among the Israeli and Palestine, in Israel and Palestine. It's easier to do it with the pre-army people outside of the education ministry, where I think in 2019, before COVID, we were talking to some, like, I think 5,000 Israeli youth, people like Ahmed, Osama, Sully, all our Palestinian members and Israeli members, sitting and talking to young Israelis before they joined the army. Now, with the schools, it's it's different because there is resistance, and it has a lot to do with who is the Minister of Education at that time. Sure enough, Bennett, who is now the Prime Minister, used to be the Education Minister. Yes, and he really opposed allowing peace movements to go to the schools. So it really had to do with to what extent the head of the school is independent or not independent, or feel independence or follow the party line. Some schools in Tel Aviv area, in Haifa, that are kind of, the head of the schools are more leaning towards, they are liberal, basically liberal, without saying left or right, they're liberal. They believe in human rights, they believe in talk, in the discussion. So they allowed combatants and breaking the silence to go in. But sure enough, it was just several months ago that, or maybe half ago, I don't know, that the Reali school in Haifa, which is a very acclaimed school, tried to bring breaking the silence. And who was it? I think the government, the Ministry of Education, tried to tell him that you cannot bring this person in. You cannot let this person talk among the kids. And in general, listen, I mean, we can't ignore the Israeli public is going towards the right. I think that out of the 120 members of parliament, 70 of them are belonging to the right wing, to the right side, on the right side. So that's the public. That's the public. The government is another issue. But this is the situation. This is the situation. We're trying very hard. So we do it in other ways. We do it in trips. We offer the public trips. Today, there was a trip for the public, open to the public in Acre. Acre is a Jewish Arab town. And we showed people came and saw the situation of Arabs living with Jews and the history and the problems. So, you know, we're trying in different ways to get to the public. Or another one, so you asked about education, I answer about spreading the word. I mean, we just have a campaign, we just had a campaign of putting small stickers on products that were produced not in Israel, in the West Bank. You know, there's a law in Israel. You have to say where the product was produced. We don't say don't buy, because there's a law against it. We can get into trouble. But we can tell people this was produced at the occupied territories. So we went and we put stickers in stores and stuff, and it made it to the papers. We made it to the papers. People were interviewed by that on the radio. So that's, you know, that's our way to get to the public.
Thank you, Elie. It's a great response. Ahmed, do you have anything to add on education?
Yeah, for sure. But let me just have a question in chat about the boycott. Actually, I am, as Ahmed personal, I don't buy any Israeli products in my home. So, and I support don't buy anything. About another question about dialogue and another organization who wrote like Ali Abu Awad organization. Ali Abu Awad is my friend. Yeah, and he's a close friend to me. I love him so much. But also, as Ahmed, I don't agree in his vision. He's working with settlers. That I don't like. But he's still my friend. And sometimes we, about the education. Guys, somebody don't know the situation as well in Palestine and Israel. In Israel, yes, maybe they can make like both schools, or as well as as Elie said. But in Palestine, it's completely different. We separated. There is a wall between us. We cannot meet. Palestinian people, Israeli people cannot meet just in area C, small bases, and there is no mixed school, no mixed education. We cannot do that, ever, never. And we don't think, because we believe in two states, and we need to be separate between Palestine and Israel. Relationship, yes, we can do relationship between a student, between youth, between people. We visit as a family. We have good relationship as a family. Elie, he hosted me in his home. I think he visited me in my home. I went with my family to Haifa, to another member. So he host me like 3 days together, and I host him in my home with his family many times. So we share, we have good relationship as a people, as families together. But for like, how can I, I forget this word, like rasmi. Anyone can speak Arabic here? No, okay, but in general, to have like system, both education system altogether, education, yeah, system together. No, we have alone only our system, and they have also them system. We visit the Israeli high school many times. I do it by myself. Also, I take my son with me sometimes. He's now 18 years old. When he was like 15 years old, 16 years old, yeah, I take him with me, and he talked with the Israeli youth too. So that's happened, and that we can do it. But another thing, I think.
Thank you. There's so many great questions in the chat, and unfortunately, we're not going to have time to address them all because we are running low on time. But I do want to pick a couple out. One being Will Thomas's question. Do you believe that people should support the boycott, sanctions, and divestment campaign, which was created by Palestinian civil society as a nonviolent campaign? Do you think that that's each of you, from your own perspective, do you think it's an effective and ethical way to try to bring peace?
For me, any non-violence protest against Israel, I support it. Any non-violence protest struggle against Israel, to end the occupation and to build a good relationship between the Palestinians and the Israelis. It must be the aim very clear to this. I don't support boycott because I hate Israeli. No, I don't support boycotts to destroy Israel. No, I support boycotts to end the occupation. To end the occupation. Yes.
Yeah. Elie, what are your thoughts?
Support Ahmed.
Say again?
Everything he said. I really think that, as I said, the Israeli population is moving to the right. And I really, really, really feel that there must be pressure from the outside. But as Ahmed said, I really agree. This is BDS is a big range of lots of things. Anti-Zionism, anti-Israel, anti-this, anti-that. It's true. And with Israel, with combatants, we went through some change. We started recognizing, the Israelis mainly, and combatants as well, that it's not only the occupation we're dealing with. To deal with the occupation and to deal with the Israeli-Arab conflict or Israeli-Palestinian conflict, we need to deal with 48 as well. But we're not questioning the establishment of Israel. The facts are the facts. We have a state, we have people, we have two people in the same area. We need to deal with the problems that were created then and were created later and are now. We have to deal with all these things, recognizing rights, all kinds of rights, recognizing demands of security, of life, of everything else. So we need to deal with these things. And I really think that, and we do our most to get help from the outside on that. Whether we are using, now we are working on, for instance, on war crimes. We're talking about war crimes. When we meet soldiers, when we come up with signs, we tell them, what you're doing now is a war crime. To bring in settlers to support and defend settlers on occupied land, this is a war crime. To use natural resources, this is a war crime. And people need to understand it on a personal basis. All these soldiers, all these big high officers. So, and lots of it has to be with support from the outside, from other countries, for people not to land, to be able to land on an airport, and for an airport, we need London, the government in England to support this idea that Israel is committing war crimes. The Hague is coming from the outside. And I'll tell you, I did it in a personal way by my relatives sent letters to their Congress. There was a question regarding using Congress people. sending letters to Congress people, sending letters to the consulate, Israeli consulate where you live. I think it's extremely important to spread the word. And that's how I feel that the pressure should be. It's not should be a pressure. It shouldn't be a boycott across the board against Israel. It has to be directed towards something, toward how money is being used, how American taxpayers' money is being used, for instance.
Thank you both so very much for your time today. Unfortunately, we are out of time. And I really appreciate your voices. My apologies to everyone who tuned in for the late start and the confusion around around our speakers getting here. And again, Ahmed and Elie, thank you so very much for being with us and talking with us today. And for everyone, feel free to drop emails if you want to reach Doreen and I. It's info@nhpeaceaction.org to reach the boards of directors, C3board@nhpeaceaction.org, or C4board@newhampshirepeaceaction.org. So thanks again. And this will be available afterwards on the website under our live stream tab on YouTube and on Facebook. So, so for folks who couldn't catch it, we can send them to it afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you, Ahmed.
Bye.
Thank you,
Thank
Elie.
you, bye, people. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Bye-bye.